What's going on, gang? Welcome back to another episode here on High Rollers, Roads and Rails. I am here in the beautiful eastern shore of Virginia, and I'm here on vacation. But what you guys don't know is that the eastern shore is rich with railroad history, and we're going to dive into that right now. So stay tuned. So I got the old high roller here, and we're ready to take a trip. So y'all jump in here with me. It's going to be a lot of fun. So for this adventure, our travels take us to the eastern shore of Virginia. It is a 70-mile long region that is part of the Delmarva Peninsula and is nestled in between the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And though it might be hard to believe, this little 70-mile stretch of land is rich with railroad history. In this video, we'll check out Cape Charles, which was an important railroad town as it was a major hub for the railcar floats that floated from Cape Charles to Norfolk, Virginia. Also going to head farther up the line to Parksley, Virginia, where the Eastern Shore Railroad Museum is located. Not only is the Railroad Museum located here, but Parksley was also a very important city as far as the Eastern Shore's railroad heritage. We'll check that out later. And finally, later in the video, we'll head up the Delmarva Peninsula into southern Maryland to a little town called Snow Hill. Here we'll check out a brand new hobby shop, Corddry Crossing Hobbies, and get to see some O-scale train action. So you won't want to miss that, so y'all stay tuned. I figured to get the best overview of the rail history on the Eastern Shore, we would start right here at the Eastern Shore Railway Museum in Parksley, Virginia.
Johnson. I am the president and the docent of the Eastern Shore Railway Museum of Parksley, Virginia. The museum's been open for 20-some years now. The railroad started in the late 1800s. It was the main transportation back then. It opened up the world to these people on the Eastern Shore. They were able to get across the bay to their doctors. They were able to get their produce over faster and easier. It wound up that the businesses were prospering. There's a lot of history. Schools were built, and people took the train to go back and forth to certain schools. It was very valuable, the Eastern Shore, to the Eastern Shore, the railroad community, and there's a lot of history. And if you'd like to come and visit us, we can tell you some more about it.
That would be great. And the original rail line that came through, what was the name of that again?
The original railroad line that used to come through was called the Nip and Nin. It was the New York, Philadelphia, Norfolk line. People would go as far as Cape Charles, and they would get on a ferry and be ferried over to Little Creek in Norfolk, and then get back on a train and continue to their destination.
Okay. And then later was bought out by the Pennsylvania Railroad.
Then the Pennsylvania Railroad, and then Eastern Shore Railway, and then Bay Coast.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. And like I said, we'd love to have some of my subscribers come here and check you guys out. It's really a really nice facility. Okay. Thank you so much, Em. Thank you. So y'all, I'm walking through checking out the inside of the museum, and they've got some really interesting artifacts. And it's really cool that I've had this conversation with a few friends before, but it's cool to finally see the artifacts of the Pennsylvania Railroad in Virginia. So I had no idea for the longest time that the Pennsylvania was a Virginian railroad, but absolutely. They took over this line on the Eastern Shore and was a vital part of moving goods from the north down to the shore and over to Norfolk. So we're just taking a look at some of these beautifully preserved station signs, and now zoomed in on this map so that you can get an idea of the line that we're talking about. So right here we're on the Eastern Shore of Virginia. And that red line was the Pennsylvania's line. The dotted part is the ferry that ran from Cape Charles, which we're going to go check out here later in the video. The cars were ferried over to Little Creek, Virginia. And then the Pennsylvania would shuttle them into Norfolk, at which point they would interchange with, you guys know it, my favorite railroad, the Norfolk and Western. Builder's plate from a K4. Take a look at this awesome picture here. Here's an original photograph of a locomotive from the New York, Philadelphia, and Norfolk Railroad. The originators of this line coming through the Eastern Shore. Pretty unusual wheel arrangement on this engine too. It's a 442. Got a really neat little speeder here. This is a Fairmont speeder. You see this originated on the Savannah Atlantic Railroad. It's donated to the museum here. It's in really nice shape. That is the station that this sign was on. Here are the original plans for the little town of Parksley that we're in right here. This is really cool, an original track map for the New York, Philadelphia, Norfolk. Well, there's a little something that I know about. Class A and a J. This is obviously nothing to do with the Eastern Shore, but some cool pictures nonetheless. So we have a little O-scale Christmas layout here. And then a little HO display here. So the museum also has a really nice fleet of rolling stock out here to check out, so we're going to do that now. She has a couple cabooses open to check out, and this one is in really nice shape on the inside. A wood burning stove. You can see the Wabash caboose that we just checked out the inside of, and it's really beautiful rolling stock. A Seaboard aluminum sided streamlined coach. And I believe this is the car that the lady was telling me is actually a dining car that they do some events in and have some different dinners that they do. So again, if you guys are ever on the Eastern Shore, you need to come over and check out this museum. It's just really, really nice. Got a really nice nickel plate high-speed service. Bay window caboose. And again, one of my favorite railroads. We have a Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Pullman car. This one is the Fairfax River. Beautiful coach. And then just opposed to that, another piece of RF&P history right here. It's the Richmond, Fredericksburg, Potomac, number 178. This is a Railway Express Agency baggage car. Here's a little bit of the history of the Fairfax River, this RF&P car that we took a look at. This is probably my favorite piece here. I love this. Now this may be one of the oldest pieces of rolling stock that I've seen, especially on an outdoor exhibit. This is a boxcar that was built for the Pennsylvania Railroad. It is a X-23 boxcar. It was built in 1912 for the Pennsylvania Railroad. Guys, you just don't get to see rolling stock this old very often. This being a Pennsy car, it's completely plausible that it would have come right down this line right here. Like I said, this is the original Pennsylvania line. Well, I guess I can't say that. The original would have been the New York, Philadelphia, and Norfolk. Later sold to the Pennsylvania, but this track was laid by the museum, but I'm going to zoom in so that you guys can see. This is the remnants of what was the original trackage. The trackage has all now been ripped up as part of a rail trail that the state of Virginia is working on having funded to come through here. This will eventually be a paved biking and walking path. The tracks are long gone. But thank goodness for the museum to keep the rail heritage of the Eastern Shore alive. So we're now taking a look at the Parksley Station House, and this is one of the few remaining buildings of the railroad. And they've done a beautiful job restoring this building. See the station platforms here. And if you look closely at some of the pictures that I took a video of inside of the museum, you can actually see this building in black and white. When passengers will be waiting here, for the longest time, the roads that we see out here did not exist. The only way to get up and down the Eastern Shore was by rail. Now we'll jump inside and check out the interior of this nickel plate bay window caboose. Now, unlike the caboose that we checked out a minute ago that has a cupola style, which would have been, more upward view, bay windows came later in service and has a more outer view of the train. So this is how the conductor or brakeman or whoever was sitting back here would be able to keep track of anything the train needed to be kept track of as far as hot boxes or derailments or anything. This was the view. Another little potbelly stove, keep it warm in here. Even the commode. So according to this is actually a N&W caboose. However, I'm not going to say that this maybe didn't have nickel plate origins. As you guys know, the nickel plate was consumed into the Norfolk and Western Railroad, so it's quite the possibility this has started out as a nickel plate caboose and ended its career with the N&W, but pretty neat little piece of history there. Alright y'all, and I'm going to wrap this up here at the Eastern Shore Railway Museum. So again, if you're ever up this way, make sure you guys come in here to Parkley and check out this incredible museum. They've got some really nice artifacts local to the area. If you're a Virginia Railroad person, or especially a Pennsylvania Railroad fan, you need to come out and check out the history that they have on display here. But we're not done yet. We got some more stops to make. So next, we're going to head down the line to Cape Charles, and that is where the actual car floats would have been. So you would have followed this line south to Cape Charles, and we're going to take a look at some of the history there, because that is a very unique place in the fact that that is where the Pennsylvania would float cars on a barge from Cape Charles to Little Creek, Virginia, and then on to Norfolk, so where they would interchange with the N&W. So let's head down to Cape Charles and check that out now. Y'all ride with me. It may be hard to tell in video, but you guys can see that that open area right there is where the tracks used to lay, and it's pretty much like that all the way up US 13. The old Pennsylvania line follows the highway pretty closely, so the tracks are long gone, but the heritage is still here. So I've stopped right here off of US 13, and we're taking a look at this caboose that they got here on display right here on the side of the road. And my guess is this caboose, it's obviously a bay window caboose, but it looks like it's probably of Southern Railway origin just by the coloring on it, but there's no way to honestly tell. There's not a marker here to kind of give me any information on it. And a couple of really nice cast iron signs. There's a railroad crossing, stop and listen, and then a whistle post sign, and you guys can obviously see the Pensy origin on that. So as I'd mentioned earlier in this video, the Pennsylvania Railroad was the primary operator of the line coming down the Eastern Shore, so there's a lot of its heritage here. Alrighty gang, and we've made our way down here now to Cape Charles, Virginia. Now, the area that you see right here beside me is the former yard for the New York, Philadelphia, and Norfolk Railroad, later bought out by the Pennsylvania Railroad. And this area would have been the Cape Charles yard, and then just behind me over my shoulder here is where the docks are for the barges. So this is where the cars would have been separated and then loaded onto barges to be shipped over to Norfolk. Now, as you guys can see, there's nothing left. Everything has been ripped up. The predecessor railroad, the Eastern Shore Railroad, took this area over, and then their predecessor, the Bay Shore Railroad, took this yard over. And then about 8 years ago, they ceased operations here in Cape Charles and pulled up the tracks and no longer used the barge. So that was the end of that. So there's not much left to show you guys, but we're going to take a walk and look and see what we can see. And we'll go ahead and walk over here and take a look at the harbor and take a look at where the barges would have came in. All right, y'all, and here it is. So you can see there's not much remnants left, just a couple piers or so, but this is where the barges would have came in. And again, like I said, the freight cars would come in here, be sorted. There was tracks laid here, and then they would be rolled onto barges. And then beyond me there, that is the Chesapeake Bay. The barges would float. They said in good time, the barges would make it over in about 2 hours to Norfolk, Virginia. They do have this old ferry boat here, the Chesapeake Queen. This is a not nearly the size of the ferries that would have came in here during the early 1900s, but to give you an idea, this is where people and rail cars and everything would be ferried over. See here some more remnants of the dock that tracks would have came in on. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the purpose of this building was. I believe it to be a yard office, but this is one of the few standing features left from the rail yard here in Cape Charles. Building definitely appears to be abandoned now, but at one point, like I said, I believe that may have been a rail office, a yard office. So now we're going to head back up the street here, and we're going to go check out the Cape Charles Historical Society and go check out the Cape Charles Museum and see what we can learn there. Okay, y'all, and now I'm here at the Cape Charles Museum, and unfortunately, I guess I called them at a bad time because they're not open. But there is some neat stuff out here that I want to check out, so let's go take a look at that right now. So the first thing that we definitely have to check out is this awesome locomotive. So this is Bay Coast Railroad number 2000. Number 2000 is a GP10 that was originally built for the Illinois Central Railroad as a GP9 high hood. This locomotive was built by General Motors Electromotive Division, EMD, in 1958. And again, like I said, sold to the Illinois Central Railroad. After its service with Illinois Central, it was then sold to the Illinois Central Gulf Railroad, ICG, and renumbered to 8250. Then, in 1981, it was sold from there to the Eastern Shore Railroad, where it was renumbered to 2000 as we see it here. Then the Eastern Shore Railroad became the Bay Coast Railroad in its final rendition, but it retained the 2000 number. With this locomotive originally being a GP9, again, it would have had the high hood front and a steam generator for passenger cars. However, since it was being converted to a freight locomotive only after passenger service was dwindling, its steam generator was removed and its hood was cut to the low hood configuration that you see here. Behind the locomotive here, we have another piece of Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac history. Now, it is very surprising that these cars all ended up over here on the Eastern Shore because the R&P never operated over here. However, it is cool to see these cars here. And this is a baggage car. This was built in the 1930s. And here we have another nickel plate caboose. Now, this caboose was originally built for the Wheeling and Lake Erie Railroad. Then after a merger, it ended up with the nickel plate, which is the livery that you see on it here now. And then once the nickel plate merged with the Norfolk and Western, it became an N&W caboose. Now, pretty neat that the Norfolk and Western Railroad had donated this car to the Tidewater chapter of the National Railway Historical Society, which is how it ended up here at this museum here in Cape Charles, Virginia. So here we have a tank car painted in the Bay Coast Railroad livery, and it looks really sharp. So this car was originally built for GATX and operated here on the Eastern Shore, under the Eastern Shore Railroad. Then upon its purchase from Bay Coast painted this car in this livery and used it as a storage tank for fuel for locomotives on the rail yard. And again, we have a 50-foot single-door boxcar here, again in the Bay Coast Railroad livery. This car was used by the U.S. military and then was purchased by Bay Coast. And instead of using this in operation, it was used as a machine shop for the railroad on the yard. So that's how it ended up in this really nice blue and white livery. Boxcars were very prevalent here on the Eastern Shore, as that is primarily what was moved on the barge when the New York, Philadelphia, and Norfolk Railroad first had their north to south route here on the peninsula. Again, like I said earlier in the video, it was later purchased by the Pennsylvania Railroad, but most of the goods that were moving were dry goods. Again, that were moved on the floats over to Norfolk. There's a little bit of neat information that I never knew. I'd always heard the term highball, But this here gives you a really great breakdown of what that actually means. So the earliest rail signals was a post with a ball on top of it, and when the ball was high, that meant the track was clear. So that's something that I didn't know. But so here is a half-size replica of an early high ball signal that would have been used here on Cape Charles. So this railroad depot that we're walking up now is the Biloxim Passenger Station. And if we take a look at this article here, so this building was built in the early 1900s, used for both the York, Pennsylvania and Norfolk Railroad, also the Pennsylvania Railroad, and they went out of service in the 1950s. And just before this building was slated to be demolished, it was saved and then torn down and reconstructed here at the Cape Charles Museum in 2006. So this is really cool. This will give you an idea of exactly what a station house would have looked like here on the peninsula. Y'all, this is really something neat here. So this doesn't look like much to anybody, but this is actually a pilot house that would have been on one of the barges used by the Pennsylvania Railroad down here at the Cape Charles Ferry. So if you take a look at this photograph here, that structure right there is the pilot house. Now you can see it sets over top of the barge, and there's your rail cars there on the barge itself. Now the barge was 4 tracks wide and over 400 feet long. If you guys would like to take a read on this, this is really interesting stuff here. So this was on the barge, the Captain Edward Richardson. Super cool piece that is unique to this area. Got a really cool old farmall tractor sitting out here in front of the Historical Society, and obviously this just represents the agriculture. Agriculture was, and still is a very important part of industry here on the Eastern Shore. And if it wasn't for the agriculture, the railroads really would have had no need to come. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up here in Cape Charles. Now we're going to head north on US 13. We're going to follow the old line and go up to Snow Hill, Maryland for some really cool O-gauge train action there. So y'all just stay tuned. What's going to take about an hour for me is going to take no time for y'all. All right, gang, and our next stop here on my little railroad extravaganza here on the Eastern Shore, we are at Corddry Hobbies in Snow Hill, Maryland. And so I've made a ride up here to Maryland to check out this hobby shop. I met these folks at York back in April. I actually sold them an engine, and so now I'm kind of returning the favor and coming out here to check out their shop. So they've got a huge layout running in here, and as well as some trains for sale. So let's see what they got. Y'all take a look at that engine. Isn't that a gorgeous paint scheme? This is a custom run. Delmarva Central. Really nice looking switcher. Now this Great Northern engine, he actually purchased from our friend Bob Bueller back at York. I actually sold him this set, so gorgeous Great Northern articulate. This engine is also a custom run for the local area. Maryland, Delaware, Delmarva route, Alco. This is going to be a killer layout once it's finished. Turntable. It's also telling me that this sawmill scene right here is actually a scale model of one that's in their local town here, so completely custom piece, and that is going to be absolutely killer. Check it out, guys. Tons of Menards buildings, the new Carvana Tower, parking garage, some really cool scenes here. Tons and tons of Pensy power. So again, like I said, this is a operating hobby shop right here in Snow Hill, Maryland. So, got a nice selection of O-gauge accessories and rolling stock here. Got Menards, MTH, RMT, Lionel, all kinds of selection here. I'm just going to quickly glance over what we have here. He's also starting to do some in-house weathering. These are a couple examples that they've done, and I gotta say, it looks absolutely killer, these weathered cars. Really been thinking about getting into some weathering myself. RF&P hoppers. Got a nice selection of die-cast cars here. Some toys for the kids. And again, here's a really cool map from the Pennsylvania Railroad. This is 1956 is the date of this track map. As you can see, this here is the eastern shore of Virginia. Cape Charles, which we saw earlier, is there. Parksley, this is where the museum is at that we toured at earlier. And then Snow Hill, you see right here, that's where we are right now. So, pretty cool. He also has a nice selection of some controls stuff here. You got some WTIUs in stock. And then he's got a ton of HO selections from Atlas and MTH and Walthers. These are super cool cars. If I was an HO guy, I'd have to pick these up. These Virginia and Maryland, these are custom run box cars that he's done. So if you're an HO guy, make sure you hit them up. Got some Proto 3 upgrades, some Atlas track. And it's got a good little selection of locomotives here. This is a new MTH ES44 Western Maryland Heritage Unit. Kinds of JT Mega Steam oils. So we got a nice selection of Woodland Scenics cars and people and all kinds of turf and stuff for your scenic needs. Got some HO starter sets, as well as some YNL O-gauge starter sets. So really killer. And guys, like I said again, if you want some really neat custom runs, he does some custom runs for the local lines in here. And right now, I'll show you guys, he has got these Delmarva Central. These are going to be MTH Rail King PS2 hoppers with the Delmarva Central patch on it. So, and again, these, you've seen some of the custom run locomotives and stuff. So if you're in the Eastern Maryland or Eastern Shore area and you want some really nice local stuff, this is the place to check out.
I'm Frank. I'm the owner of Corddry Crossing Hobbies here in Snow Hill, Maryland, and we started back in October 2024. Our club lost our River Club space. We had a large O-scale layout. We're about cut down about half the size now, but we found a home in this building here, and I started a hobby shop. We carry lots of brands such as MTH. We have some line now, Waller, Bowser, Atlas. We have a 8x32 foot train layout in the middle of the store, and we're working on trying to get an HO layout in the window, which is going to be cool, probably next year or so.
Nice.
The layout, the scale layout is kid oriented. We have 8 kids currently, and they just have a blast on the layout.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. We appreciate you having us out here today, and then you got a great shop, and look forward to seeing what you guys do, and definitely looking forward to them custom runs you got coming up.
Yeah, so. Thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, man. Thanks. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Alrighty, y'all, and here's their shop again. So, like I said, Corddry Crossing Hobbies. Nice little local store right here in Snow Hill, Maryland. So, if you're ever up on the Eastern Shore or in the eastern part of Maryland, y'all come check them out. Alrighty, y'all, and with that, that's going to wrap up our adventure today. I'm back here in Cape Charles now, and I'm back here on the north end of Cape Charles Beach, and I'm going to go do some relaxing. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at some of the very rich railroad history here on the Eastern Shore. and I really enjoyed bringing it to you and learned a few things myself. So with that, y'all, I just ask that you like, you comment, and you subscribe. And let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know if you learned anything about the Eastern Shore, or just tell me what you guys think. But with that, thank y'all so much for watching, and we'll see y'all down the line.